Alright, welcome everybody to my channel. This is Mon, and today we're gonna go over an updated guide on the Corrosion shotgun. So let's get right into it. So, well, for the new people here that have not seen the old one, I'm just gonna go over the weapon features and what power surge is real quick before we get into the meat of it. So let's start by taking a look at what its weapon features are. So, a 70% chance to trigger power surge with a hit, but will not inflict power surge status. So essentially what this means is, I might as well just go check what power surge is, right? So you will deal status damage of 50% PSI intensity once and inflict power surge status for 6 seconds. So you've got your damage here, and then you've got the status, which is pretty much accuracy minus 40 for the enemy. Damage is of shock element type. The additional damage cannot crit. However, for the Corrosion shotgun, it can crit. As a matter of fact, it will crit if you have 100% crit rate, obviously. So it cannot strike weak spots and will not decay with distance. And then they give you a reduced version of the damage formula. If you'd like to learn more about that, I've already made a video on it. So yeah, just check it out if you're interested. So pretty much the next weapon feature, we've got Power Surge can deal crit hit, so it can crit, and Power Surge crit rate plus 15%. So very nice 15% crit rate buff on your Power Surge only. Then when Power Surge is triggered, Power Surge crit damage plus 15% for 6 seconds. Effect can stack up to 10 times. So this is really cool. Every time you trigger Power Surge, you get 15% crit damage. It stacks up to 10 times. And then when Power Surge is triggered, Power Surge crit damage plus 15% for 6 seconds. Effect can stack up to 10 times. So in total, you can actually reach 150 crit damage of a buff for your Power Surge. And then Power Surge damage factor plus 15%. So with that in mind, let's go take a look at our calibrations. So for the main effect, you'd want Rapid Shot Style for the 25% fire rate. That's what's going to allow you the DPS. Draw speed is nice for, well, just weapon action speed, right? And then attack minus 10%. It's really a minor of a debuff for Rapid Shot Style. Then for your calibration substats, it doesn't matter too much. Just be aware that if you purposefully try to get as much crit rate as possible from every single source in this game, you're gonna go over 100% crit rate for your Power Surge crit rate and maybe your normal bullets crit rate. So just keep that in mind, right? The essential difference is that you should definitely go for double crit rate substats if you're not gonna use the crossbow as your secondary weapon. And if you will, then you can definitely consider 1 crit rate sub plus 1 crit damage sub, or even 2 crit damage substats. It's essentially it's all gonna depend on the mods that you're gonna run and the weapons that you're gonna use, right? And then for instance, the long axe. For if I can take this as example, if you take a look at the second weapon feature, for every target hit, heavy attacks grants all weapon crit rate plus 8%, stacking up to 3 times. So you can, like, if you just try to get as much crit rate as possible, obviously, maybe don't go for the, well, double crit rate calibration attributes here. So then let's take a look at the accessories that you want to run. This hasn't changed since my last guide, really. This is muzzle. I'm still running the extended break for the accuracy and the range. Then, well, actually, this thing gives you a debuff on stability, but like, as long as you can control the recoil, you're fine with it, then, right? Then tactical laser sight for the 12% aiming speed and the accuracy. Accuracy is pretty important for this gun, right? And you can't even choose the drum mag. The game just picks it up for you, so it's locked. So that's pretty much it for the accessories. Now let's move on to the secondary weapons. So essentially, it still hasn't changed, really, even if the crossbow's been nerfed, right? Minus 15%, which is right. Like which is why I can still see myself recommending double crit rate substats, due to the recurve crossbow nerf. But really, just don't forget everything I've talked about previously for the calibration attributes substats choice, right? Pretty much you can run the recurve crossbow. Bingo and wildfire can work as well. Just grants weak spot damage with 15% on hit. Effect can stack up to 3 times. And after defeating enemy with a weak spot hit, attack plus 15% for 20 seconds. So really, they all give useful buffs, right? So for the wildfire, it's the 80% chance to spread bullseye to one enemy within a 15 meters area if there are no enemies. Weapon damage plus 25% for 10 seconds. So this could be used for boss killing, right? The bosses that don't spawn 8s. Then when hitting reswap of actually this doesn't matter because the moment you swap out of the wildfire, you lose the buff. So if I can show it to you right here by equipping the wildfire, say I shoot, right? I've got 3 stacks. I swap out, I lose the buff. But really, if you're gonna be more PvE focused against bosses, definitively keep running the recurve crossbow. Then for your melee, use the long axe. So heavy attacks activate Fortress Warfare up to once every 10 seconds. So you've got a 10-second cooldown on this. Then for every target hit, heavy attacks grant all weapons crit rate plus 8%, and stacking up to 3 times. So essentially, a long axe, right? If you do the full animation for the heavy attack, so for instance, if I go here, I do the full animation, I hit the enemies, I'll get, well, the stack for my crit rate. So if I can just go in my stats here, as you can see, Light Strike double Storm Boost crit rate is increased, melee speed as well, but we really don't care about that. And the neat thing about this is that you don't need to do the full animation if you don't really care about the crit rate. Right? You don't need to do the full animation to get the Fortress Warfare buff. So I can literally just cancel it like this. If we wait, I get it right here. Now, let's move on to your key gear. So this is still the same, really. Gas Mask Hood is mandatory to have the best damage. It gives you crit rate, which is insanely important. As we've seen in the weapon features, your elemental damage can crit as well now. So crit is the main stat that you're going to be going for this gun. But of course, if you don't have the Gas Mask Hood unlocked, you can always run the Mayfly Goggles in the meantime. It's just that you won't deal as much damage. Then for your gear sets, go with 4-piece Lone Wolf. So here, as you can see, the 3-piece bonus gives you stacking crit damage, and the 4-piece stacks the crit damage a bit more, and it gives you crit rate for 2 seconds after reloading, which is like a pretty small quality of life. But you're going for the 4-piece more for the stacking crit damage. Then, because you're running 4-piece Lone Wolf, you're actually going to end up with a 1-piece Bastille, hopefully, because when HP is above 70%, weapon damage plus 10%. Now, if you don't want to run a 4-piece Lone Wolf, you can consider 3-piece Lone Wolf. So you're gonna lose out on the 8% crit rate and the 12% crit damage, right? However, you could get yourself, if I go in blueprint, armor blueprint, 2-piece Savior. So Savior, the 2-piece Savior, when HP is above 70%, weapon and status damage plus 10%. Now, I must say that for PvP, the stacking crit damage buff, unless if you're like constantly shooting and fighting, the stacking crit damage buff, you're not going to gain much from it. If you're picking out fights, like say, I don't know, you're fighting like once every 40 seconds. Like if you fight once every 40 seconds, you're going to lose out on the stacking crit damage buff. It's just not even going to be worth it. You might as well go with combinations such as 2-piece Lone Wolf, since you still want the crit rate, right? But you could instead get yourself 2-piece Falcon for the crit damage. Just some other combinations that doesn't require you to stack buffs. Now, I just wanted to say real quick before we move on to the substats that if you've made it up until now in the video and you're enjoying it, please don't hesitate to drop a like and subscribe to my channel. I hugely appreciate the support. Now to the important part that's really changed. These are the Substats Priority. Let's just cut it like that. So pretty much for your weapon, right? For your weapon, helmet, boots, and masks, you'd want to go with violent suffix mods. Then for your gloves and for your pants, go with resonance mods if you are in a PvE server. So this is what I wanted to highlight. However, if you are on a PvP server and you haven't gotten resonance mod, you can't get them. So just go with violent. And the reason for these suggestions is that up until now, you can only get those special resonance mods. So if I can show right here, those special resonance suffix mods if you are in a PvE server from claiming the reward boxes from Prime Wars. So I usually only open the legendary ones and the purple ones to have those mods. So let's focus a bit more on the resonance suffix mods, right? Resonance pretty much means, that I've shown just like a few seconds before, it means that you get a stacking effect for doing its requirements. So if we just read this one, it says Actually, I have two lines of resonance. So it's a deal 1 instance of crit damage, elemental damage plus 1%, effect stacks up to 8 times and lasts for 6 seconds. And then deal 1 instance of elemental damage, crit damage plus X% depending on the color of your substat. And the effect stacks up to 5 times and lasts for 6 seconds. The reason why this is good is if we just take a look at the crit damage buff, right? Crit damage plus 2.4 when it's blue. Now what is it when it's gray? Well, gray it would be 2.4 divided by 3. That would make it 0.8, right? So the maximum value for this stacking buff would be 4%, and since it stacks up to 5 times, you're going to stack it to 20%, which is more than your normal violent mods, right? So you should actually aim for resonance. So essentially, you have a lot of variations for these line buffs. So for instance here, deal 1 instance of weak spot damage, crit damage plus 0.4%. If we can do I have another one? I think yeah, deal 1 instance of weak spot damage, crit damage plus 1%. However, the two best ones that you should look for, really you're capped out at 2 of these like special lines of substats. And the duo that you should be looking for would be this, right? So deal 1 instance of crit damage, elemental damage plus 1%, and deal 1 instance of crit elemental damage, crit damage plus X%, whatever, right? And the reason for this is because those are the most consistent type of buffs that you can get. And well, they should be what you should be aiming for, right? Since well, if you take a look at the other one, deal 1 instance of weak spot damage, crit damage was 0.4%. The reason why this won't be as reliable as these lines is because, first of all, you'd have to hit weak spots, which sometimes you either cannot or your aim isn't going to allow you to. So this is why you should favor for these two kind of lines. Now, do keep in mind that you cannot get weapon damage nor status damage bonus from resonance mods, so don't even bother for fishing them. Essentially, the best ones that you'll find would be this like this kind of resonance mods. Now, do keep in mind this is on status enhancement, which you wouldn't want. You would want this on something else. But essentially, for these 4 lines of substats, this is what you should be aiming for, right? So these 2 lines, and then damage against X type of enemy, and then magazine capacity or like reload speed boost, whatever. Now then, for your violent mods, look to have weapon damage bonus versus X type of enemies, and something like magazine capacity. Do note that your mods may vary, and you might not get weapon damage bonus, but rather 2 different damage bonus against X type of enemy and magazine capacity. It's fine. Now let's talk about the mods. So for your main gun, the Corrosion, you have essentially 2 choices. Do either static shock or shock rampage. The difference in terms of performance between them will lie in their substats, so choose whichever that has the better ones. Don't go with surge amplifier, as it is simply a worse static shock, though it might still be redeemable with its substats. Although if you put the exact same substats on static shock and surge amplifier and compare them both, static shock will always come on top. Then the shock diffusion is just completely useless for this gun. Then for your secondary weapons mod, go with vulnerability amplifier. It gives a bonus of 8% vulnerability to the enemies, which is always nice. Now for your melee weapons mods, it doesn't matter. The Fortress Warfare mods don't activate if you're not using the long axe actively. So really just, it doesn't matter whether you put a mod on it or not. Then for your helmet, so if we take a look at the helmet mods, best in slot is going to be Deviation Expert. It has a 10% fire rate and 20% stats damage bonus on the entire magazine, which makes it the best. The option nearest to that would be something like Momentum Up and Fateful Strike, but you'd only use Fateful Strike if there are no weak spots to hit, and Momentum Up if you don't have a good Deviation Expert. Then for the mask, your first choice would be First Electrocution. So if we just read the description real quick, for enemies without Power Surge status, Power Surge's ultimate damage plus 30%. This gun does not apply Power Surge as we've seen in the weapon features. 70% chance to trigger Power Surge damage with a hit, but will not inflict Power Surge status. So, First Electrocution has literally perfect synergy for this gun. However, I must say that please, if you do content with other people and they run power surge guns that do apply the power surge status, do not run this mod, since, well, your teammates will apply power surge status and the buff from this mod will not take effect. So either run Thunderclap or tell your teammates to not use their power surge guns. Then the other option, which is more of a PvE focused option, would be Targeted Strike. So Targeted Strike, you'd use that if you often use your secondary bullseye weapon. Just note that if you run Targeted Strike, try to tone down your crit rate from other sources as to not go over 100%, since while Targeted Strike gives you 10% crit rate. And that, keep in mind that this mod will perform worse than First Electrocution if you don't mark enemies often, but it will perform better if you do. As a matter of fact, it will do better than First Execution as long as you mark the enemies you're fighting against. Now, for your gloves, since the Corrosion Shotgun is a crit weapon, you should go with either Crit Amplifier or Crit Boost. Whichever that has the better substats, they will perform pretty closely if you give them the same substats. So really just substats make the difference between these two mods. Now, moving on to boots, as per usual, Covered Advanced is the general best for like every single weapon. Nothing else really beats it, as they're all either more conditional or give less buffs. Moving on to top, either Munition as an amplifier, status, Flame Resonance, or Crit Damage Enhancement, whichever that has the better substats. Then lastly, for your pants, it's a really easy choice. It's gonna be Deadshot. You get 45% crit damage bonus given to your normal bullets and to your status damage bullets after 9 bullets fired, which is huge. None of the other mods even come close to it, right? So this one, Precision Shot, you'd have to, dump out your entire magazine just for a 24% elemental damage bonus, which only, benefits your elemental damage. It doesn't benefit your normal bullets damage. Unstoppable, you're rarely going to shoot enemies with this shotgun from 20 meters away, even if this shotgun is pretty good for long range, since, it has such a high chance to proc Power Surge, and Power Surge damage does not decay with distance, right? Then, status amplification, you spend so much time emptying a magazine that you won't be able to pretty much keep this buff at like 2-3 stacks or whatever. And then Bullet Siphon, really, every 5 bullets grants a 4% weapon damage. That only benefits your normal bullet damage, and like you actually have to shoot a lot of bullets to stack this, which is why Deadshot is the best one. Now let's go take a look at the Cradle buffs you want to be running. So for the mandatory or almost always mandatory ones, you have Handgun Enhancement for the plus 20% damage when using your shotgun. Then you also have Tactical Combo, so weapon damage plus 25% for 4 seconds after switching weapons or reloading. Then you have Status Enhancement, so after hitting a weak spot, status damage plus 25% for 3 seconds. Almost every single enemy in the game has a weak spot, other than like very few, maybe 3, so the Fridge, the Claw Machine, and something else that I forgot. Then you'd want First Round Blast, so after reloading, instant damage, Power Surge, and Unstable Bomber, plus 25% for 4 seconds. And then Transient Impact, so after defeating an enemy, Power Surge damage plus 25% and Shock Elemental damage plus 18%, lasting for 15 seconds. After equipping those Cradle, we are left with 3 choices. So you can choose between Anti-Void Shotgun, so Shotgun deals 100% damage to Super Anomaly Void, so you deal increased damage to Super Anomalies. Then you can choose Master Tactician to have better damage against Great Ones. Deviation Master to have more damage against Great Ones and Elites. Otherwise, if you fight solo, so you're not in a team, right, you can definitely go with Lone Walker for the 20% increased damage to monsters. You can choose to have Steady Hand as long as you're under either Fortress Warfare status and or use a secondary weapon that applies the Bullseye effect. Lastly, you can choose Bounty Hunter as long as you kill your marked enemies. Now for the food buffs, so let's start with drinks. Whimsical Drink is your go-to for damage, used to gain 25% status damage bonus. Then, however, if you cannot make that, you can still get Stardust Raspberry Shaved Ice if you use a secondary weapon that can apply Bullseye, so that this right here used to increase your continuous DPF effect duration by 20%. It will increase your Bullseye effect duration. Now then, for the food buffs, here, ideally, what you're running is going to be the Stargazy Pie, used to increase your crit damage by 25% when your energy is full. 25% crit damage means you get an increase on your status damage and on your normal bullet damage. Then you can aim for weaker options if you can't make the Stargazy Pie, since it is pretty costly, you know. It costs deviated pumpkins, deviated saffron, and deviated wheat. So other than that, you can go for shattered bread, assorted canned fruits, French fries for the when you use the long axe, you get like 5 seconds under Fortress Warfare status without the mods. Shellfish meat, and don't forget, like, I'm not gonna name every single option here, but I do want to tell you to not forget pan-fried fish. So the buffs from pan-fried fish, they are actually stackable. So for instance, I can get the one with the angel fish for 5% crit damage, and then I could eat the weak spot damage plus 5%, and both will stack up on each other. I hope you enjoyed my guide. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel, as I immensely appreciate the support from you guys. Anyways, if you have any questions or video suggestions, don't hesitate to drop them in the comments. And for now, take care, and I'll see you in my next one.